be a kind of polite love or bright. I only have eyes for
I know it's gonna sound cheesy, but the moment we locked eyes, there was just a spark.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Joining me, as always, is Mr. Venom. How's it going, Venom?
Greetings and salutations, Sexbot owners. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. How the hell you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well. I guess that's not a spoiler, but I actually have some questions on that once we get into the movie. But that's I guess that's a little mini preview. Also with us, it's Don and Ellie. What's up, Don?
Yeah, what's going on? Always happy to be here.
All right. So if Venom's intro didn't tip you off, we are covering the new release Companion that just hit this past weekend. And let's see, we have our synopsis off IMDb. A billionaire's death sets off a chain of events for Iris and her friends during a weekend trip to his lakeside estate. Well, that really kind of masks a lot of things, which I guess is a good thing. But this is written and directed by Drew Hancock, stars Jack Quaid, Sophie Thatcher, who's turning into kind of a somewhat it girl because she was in Heretic. And I first knew her from
I thought
Yellow
she
Jackets.
looked familiar.
She was one of the more.
I thought she looked familiar, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got familiar. I don't know if Yellow Jackets was her first thing, but that's kind of where I got familiar with her. The first couple seasons of that, and then I noticed afterwards she started getting like movie roles. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes going forward. But with that said, I will throw it over to Venom to get his general thoughts on Companion. So what'd you think?
All right, before I get into my thoughts on Companion, I just want to kind of reiterate a point that I've made previously in the past and just talk about how Companion is the perfect example. Now, longtime listeners of the show, and even, those of you who just kind of joined us, should know that I don't watch trailers. This movie is the perfect example for why I do not watch trailers. I had no idea what was going on going into this movie. I had no idea what it was about. And I am so happy because the reveal of what Iris is was an absolute shock to me. Even the poster, if you've seen the poster, even the poster is a little bit of a spoiler for this movie. But luckily, I had never even seen the poster. I don't really make it a habit of looking at the posters for coming attractions at the theater as I'm entering or leaving the theater. I just go in, take care of my business, go out. And man, I am so incredibly happy because when Josh says, Iris, go to sleep, for the first time in the film, I flipped the fuck out. I literally had no idea what was going on, and that was the first indication of what kind of movie I was dealing with. And my friends, I was so happy about it. So, I try to talk the spoils of not watching trailers. And like I said, this is going to be the perfect example, because if you watch this trailer, you already know what's going on. Like, the whole first act of the movie is almost pointless if you watch the trailer for this movie. Like, this is another example, kind of like we talked about Abigail last year, where we felt that it was mismarketed. And this is another movie where I feel like they gave us way too much in the trailer. The trailer should have just been about the murder, the first initial murder, and then just the friends kind of dealing with how they're gonna, go about the rest of the weekend. Instead, the trailer gives away the fact that Iris indeed is a robot, and it's not really giving anything away if you've seen the trailer. But like I said, for me, it was an amazing moment in the theater. I saw this movie twice because I wanted to see it again to see if there were any telltale signs for those movie viewers like myself who had no idea what this was about the first time. And I gotta say, the second watch for this was even better than the first. Some of the little signs, some of the little clues that they give away in the first act of the film before we find out what Iris it actually is are so clever, so well done. So for the first time in a very long time, I'm not only going to recommend that people go out and see this movie, I'm going to recommend you see it a second time, because that second watch, it's so tongue-in-cheek. There's so many winks and nods to the audience that I absolutely loved it. So to my actual general thoughts on the film now, I absolutely love this movie. I had a great time with it. This is one of those guilty pleasure, kind of petty, vindictive movies that do my heart well. I absolutely love the journey that Drew Hancock took us on for this one. I loved Iris. I thought Sophie Thatcher, and she really is, like Mike said, she's turning into a little bit of a genre darling, and I love that, because even though I was a little down on the third act of Heretic, her performance in Heretic cannot be denied. It was just great. It was stellar. I loved it. And now here we are again with Companion, another great performance, not just by Sophie Thatcher, but by everyone in the cast except for one person, which I'll get into in a little bit. And I'm probably going to make some enemies with the statement I'll be making in a little bit, but I'll save it for a few minutes from now. Like I said, I love the setup. I love the reveal once we actually get the reveal. Like I said, for people who watch the trailer, that reveal is going to be pointless to you. But for me, it was an aha moment, like just a gasp, if you will. I didn't physically audibly gasp in the theater, but it was definitely something in my head like, oh, shit. That explains a lot of what's happening, the way that Josh is treating Iris. Like, it didn't make sense that he was treating her so poorly throughout the first act of the film, and even swearing to her when it wasn't warranted, just all of that was just that big, okay, I get it moment, and I loved it. So, and then where the story goes from there after we find out what Iris is, and we get more and more reveals, more twists and turns, and ultimately they all worked for me. Like, I watched this today for the second time in the theater with a big old smile on my face from beginning to end. The comedy works in this movie. Now, it's not side-splitting comedy that's going to leave your stomach, in pain by any stretch of the imagination. It's very, very dark, but the comedy so works. And Harvey Guillen, for those who watch What We Do in the Shadows, Harvey Guillen, of course, plays Guillermo, and he basically plays the same character. He's basically still Guillermo in this movie, just without the Van Helsing blood. So he's not hunting vampires by any stretch, but he is the catalyst for the comedy in this movie. Sergey, who's not even in the movie for very long, is legitimately funny with some of the things that he says throughout the film. And then, like I said, some of the twists and turns that I won't get into right now because they're very spoilery, just really, really worked for me. I legitimately enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed the interactions that Iris had with both Josh's friends and then with some strangers, like a police officer interaction that she has later in the film, and interactions that she has with one of the people at Empathetics, I think, was the name of the lab that made these companions. So overall, this is a performance-driven movie. I mean, once the kind of reveal of what's going on happens, I'm not basically the story isn't enough to carry this film. We need these great performances. We need the dark humor throughout. We need that very satisfying ending that I got, and you guys know how petty I am, so you probably already know how this movie is going to end because it left me with a smile on my face. So of course, overall, I just absolutely enjoyed this film. I enjoyed almost everything about it. It's not a 10 out of 10 by any stretch of the imagination. It does leave something to be desired. I wish the movie had more kills. I wish the kills were more visceral and on screen more than anything. I wish the kills weren't, because this movie is not about its kills, because ultimately one person gets stabbed in the back, one person gets shot in the chest. Like they're not the most compelling horror film kills. So I really wish we would have gotten to see Iris, maybe like if the movie actually went in the direction that it was setting up, a robot companion run amok, then maybe it would have been a little bit more gory, kind of like the Child's Play remake, more visceral kills, things like that. I'm not comparing the two movies, even though they do kind of have similarities. It's an AI companion that kind of misunderstands some things and then runs amok after that. So there are similarities between the two, but obviously Companion is just the better made film, the more enjoyable watch, whereas the Child's Play remake is kind of the gory, gorehound satisfying movie with great kills, decapitations, all that awesome stuff. So yeah, overall, I thoroughly enjoyed Companion, potentially my favorite movie of the year so far. I've been leaning towards Wolfman, but I think honestly, I had more fun with this movie than I did with Wolfman. Like I said, the comedy works so much better. But then the one issue that I have with the movie, and I can't get into specifics because it's a little bit of a spoiler, but it's Jack Quaid. I'm sorry. Jack Quaid in this type of role just does not fucking work for me, okay? Jack Quaid in a role that he did like The Boys, that works for me. And then even his next movie that he's got coming out called Novocaine, I'm not sure if you guys have seen the trailer for it yet. It's an action movie. Jack Quaid plays a character who can't feel any pain. Like, no matter what happens to him, he can't feel any pain. He doesn't have any pain receptors. And they kind of scrounge an action movie out of that concept. That looks moderately enjoyable. I will definitely check that out. I don't dislike Jack Quaid necessarily. I dislike Jack Quaid in these types of roles. And I'm not even going to talk about other movies where he's played a role like this, because again, it might be a little bit of a spoiler for this movie. So I'm just going to say that overall, I thoroughly love this movie. I just wish Jack Quaid would kind of stay in his lane and know his role, if you will. And I'll get deeper into my issues with Jack Quaid in this movie and other movies like this a little bit later, once we've kind of gone through the walkthrough and everything else. But yeah, overall, I thoroughly love this movie. Had a great time with it. Some minor issues with it here and there, but overall, one of my favorites of the year so far. So I'll leave my general thoughts at that.
Okay, let's kick it over to Don. What did you think of Companion?
Well, I'm obviously nowhere near as high on it as Venom is. I do think that there is some fun here. The whole idea, how it transpires, all of the, I guess the first half setting everything up, why they're there, all of the, various interactions they have, all of that's pretty fun. The reveal itself does kind of come out of nowhere if you're not paying attention and you don't really have any idea of what's going on. I mean, I only saw a trailer for it once when I was walking. I was walking through the living room to get something to drink one day, and I saw the trailer for it. So it did kind of like it was on a. I had like a small little inclination towards it, and it did kind of tell you that it was, an AI sentient being or girlfriend or whatever the terminology is. I'm not familiar with that know what she technically would be. I mean, I guess life partner or something, but uh, getting sidetracked here. When that occurs and when everything goes wrong, it does have a really fun moment. Seeing the stalking take place, the kills, they're not graphic, but they're still kind of, they play into all of that. I just wish that it would have played more into her programming gone berserk, because it does kind of set up a little bit in the early stages about when AI becomes human, and the whole idea of whether or not she's a human being, whether she has feelings, whether she has emotions, and all that other kind of stuff. Like, when does that make her a human? And that kind of takes away a little bit too much of the horror, so it feels more sci-fi than horror. I wish they would have played up more with her being this robotic, out of control AI being that kind of takes these people out that are mistreating her, and she does all of these, not necessarily take revenge for how she's being treated, but take out her aggressions on those that have been treating her like this in the past. I think that could have been a little bit more fun, but yeah, it still kind of doesn't really jump the gun for me and become a full-fledged horror film like I think it could have. But yeah, I still really enjoyed it. I mean, again, I have a lot of the same things that Venom did. I did like the presentation. You do start to feel for what she goes through. Her name is Iris, right? That's what they called her, or
Yes.
was that?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, because
That's her name. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if that was the program or if that was her genuine name. Okay. So yeah, as Iris is a really sympathetic person. You do get to feel for her. You do understand all of the interactions that she has with all of the other guys on the island there. It does kind of have a fun factor to it, and it does go overboard in a fun, cheesy, kind of goofy way in the final act. But yeah, I wish that it would have presented it a little bit more horror based, and not gone the sci-fi route. But it's fun for what it is. I didn't hate it. No, I'm not going to call it a fully fledged horror film, but I'm going to say it was fun enough. I enjoyed my time with it. Maybe not my favorite of these AI companion being, these AI kind of girlfriends, digital friends kind of things. It still has a few other issues here and there, but yeah, I didn't hate it. It's good enough for what it is, but yeah, I just wish it would have been a little bit more horror. Trying to think, but yeah, most of the other stuff would probably be a spoiler. So yeah, I guess I don't really have much else to add other than what Venom said, because I'm not as high on it, but yeah, I'm pretty close on him with a lot of stuff. But yeah, I just wish that it would have gone in a more horror route. So I guess that's pretty much it for me.
Okay. Before I get into my general thoughts, yeah, I will say that for whatever reason, I got lucky that my theaters, I never the full trailer for this kind of never rotated before, or rotated into like one of the reels out of all the movies I've seen like in the past few months. I did see the teaser a couple times, but the difference is the teaser is literally just like 30 seconds of that dinner table scene, where it really doesn't tell you anything other than, oh, this is like a volatile relationship movie. So like I was kind of thinking it was more along those lines going into it now, or at that point. Now I will say the disappointing thing is Iris. The main kind of spoilery reveal about her character was ruined for me, because I was on Facebook and I wasn't even looking for like reviews or thoughts, or I wasn't even looking for anything related to this movie. I was just scrolling like at a regular pace down my feed. The problem with that is sometimes your eyes catch things like that are like unintentional, just because with all the digital world we've become like such masters at like kind of reading stuff as we're scrolling by it. And some dude like straight up in the first sentence of his post, he like said something about the movie, and I was like, what? And I was hoping it was just a troll, because like some people will make troll posts like that. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Um, Now the downside, now I still didn't know 100% going into the movie, because like I said, at that point I didn't like look to verify if what the guy said was true. Now the downside to that is, through the first act, every bit of like dialogue, to me, I was like, oh, okay, that guy was telling the truth, because I could pick up pieces of dialogue. There was just like too many occurrences where it's like, oh, that's why she was developed or built or programmed. And like, I was like, oh shit, like that dude was telling the truth. But if you went into the movie completely 100% clean, that kind of dialogue could slip by on the first watch. Is just like, common vernacular that didn't necessarily mean what it ended up actually meaning. Um, I actually thought the review, there's something, and I won't say what it is, but there's a reveal about another character later in the movie. I thought that one was like kept pretty under wraps better. And that, to me, I still got kind of like a whole, like a oh shit moment out of it when something happens with another character later. So at least I got to get that made up for me. Um, Despite knowing more about Iris than I wish I did. Now, as far as the movie itself, yeah, I had a good time with it. I really did. This kind of exceeded my expectations. I really didn't know what to expect. Most part a younger cast, so I'm already immediately thinking, okay, I'm probably not in the demographic, but it didn't really matter. I like the story. I like the setup. I like kind of like character reveals, like motivations that we didn't know going in at the beginning. Things flipped, and I felt it was done in a believable way as far as what we learn about different characters, why they're there, what's going on. Some things might not be as innocent as they seem. I love the fact that they got I don't know how to pronounce the last name 100%, but Mark, is it Menchaca, the sheriff, the highway patrol guy? He's been kind of like a genre guy. He showed up different places. He was in one of like a movie I really liked a few years ago called Alone. And make sure if you look that up, it's the one with him, because I think there's like 3 movies that year called Alone. Um, and the only criticism I would have, and it's not really a criticism for me personally, but I could see how some people would like be turned off on a bit off it. I would say the third act, they do get kind of like monologue-y with like the subtext about like Jack Quaid's character. Like he goes into like some diatribes where like you could argue that it wasn't necessary. Like we already understand like his character is that, like, but they're really laying it on thick. It wasn't really an issue for me, but I can see people saying like, oh, that's not like, it's not necessary. You're just like giving too much exposition where it isn't needed. I think this movie explores some similar themes to a movie last year that a lot of people liked called Black Eyed Susan. And I did like Black Eyed Susan, but one of my criticisms was that, or one of the, I don't know if it's a criticism, but one of the reasons I wasn't as high on that as some people is because I felt it kind of touched on things very surface level and didn't dive into like the deeper kind of psyche, where I think Companion actually did go deeper, which is a little surprising, because this was like the bigger theatrical release, where Black Eyed Susan was like the indie release, and sometimes it's like the reverse with how the material is handled. Like I think Black Eyed Susan might be the more graphic movie as far as a sex robot goes, but I still think this one had more what's the term I'm looking for? Kind of like filled out exploration of like relationship dynamics and themes, and yeah, what it means to be human, how we look at AI go, and like as AI becomes more human like in the future, like what then becomes people's relationship with AI and robots. Because I thought Sophie Thatcher did a really good job of kind of being like playing the dual, like human but also like AI robot. Like I think it's been one of the better actually depictions of what it could possibly look like in the future, especially with once one becomes self-aware and what they do with that information. I thought she did excellent in this. But overall, yeah, I really liked it. I'm trying to think what else I could say without spoilers, but I thought it was a really fun time. I guess I'll leave it at that. So back to you, Venom.
Yeah, this kind of felt like a really good Black Mirror episode. Maybe the Ashley 2 episode. I mean, very, not ultra similar, but just, very, very, what can I put it? There's some connective tissue there. Let's go with that. But yeah, for whatever it's worth, yeah, I'll definitely be that guy that's the highest on this movie. I had an absolute blast with it. I didn't roll my eyes once. There was nothing in the movie that frustrated me other than maybe Jack Quaid's character, Josh, which we'll get into in a little bit. But yeah, even some of the misunderstandings in the movie are still, in real life, they would make you roll your eyes, but in a movie, they kind of make you smile, especially like some misconceptions about Sergei's character, which I kind of had a feeling early on. And then also the foreshadowing of a certain weapon. Like did anybody think that the final kill wasn't going to be with that tool? I mean, they foreshadow that thing like 2 or 3 times throughout the movie. They show various people using it. I'm like, yeah, they're showing us this thing way too much. Someone's going to die at the hands of this thing. And yeah, it happens. So kind of interesting. Not necessarily a pet peeve, just a little heavy-handed with the foreshadowing. That's all. But yeah, I mean, I had no issues with anyone in this movie. Iris, Josh, Patrick, Kat, Kat does her, I mean, she's not in the movie very much, but I mean, she does her role fairly well. And like Mike said, to see Mark Menchaca in here as Deputy Hendricks is great. And even the voice of Josh's car has a little bit of genre cred. Ashley Lambert plays the voice of Josh's car. For those who don't know, she also did the AI voice in Alien Romulus. The female voice over the intercom in Alien Romulus was also Ashley Lambert. She also does an AI voice in The Substance. So, I mean, she's getting a lot of like genre work as a voice actress. So kind of cool to see similar names. Because when I saw her name in the credits, I'm like, I know that name from somewhere. I couldn't pick it out necessarily, but when I looked up her IMDb, it's like, okay. I recognize her voice from all of these different genre films where she plays an AI or a computerized voice. So yeah, overall, I had a really good time with this one. I mean, what else can we really say except get into this story a little bit? So I will ask my co-hosts if they have anything else to add before we get into our spoiler-filled walkthrough, which I will try to be as fast as possible, but because I enjoyed this movie so much, I might get into some scenes with a little bit too much detail. So please forgive me now if the walkthrough gets a little long-winded. But like I said, Mike and Don, anything to add before we get into the walkthrough?
I'm good.
I would say, no, not really, because I was going to bring up the point that, like, other than the fact that it seems like it takes place in the present, and this level of tech is probably still a little bit ways off, but other than that, I mean, I still find it pretty believable, because I feel like the AI technology is there for this, just not connecting it to like such a realistic humanoid like shell yet.
Yep.
But we're getting there. I mean, you can see footage online where we're getting closer.
Yeah, Honda is making some amazing robots. Like, look up Honda's automatons coming out of Japan. They don't quite look as realistic as Sophie Thatcher in this movie by any stretch, but they're blurring the lines between reality and the uncanny valley more and more every single day. So yeah, I'd say we're probably no more than 20, 25 years away from having robots the quality of what we get in this movie. So yeah, which is kind of... It's cool and scary at the same time.
Yeah, I'll leave it on this, and before we get into spoilers, I do think this kind of it brings up the kind of like the familiar question that like even when like the robots or AI are doing like bad things, are they really the bad ones? Because they're really kind of only doing what humans are like instructing or programming them to do in these cases. and that's like I think like the bigger thing about like what the difference between them and humans is like, do they really have a choice in the matter if it's just programming, and like where the AI and technology will eventually take us, where they can almost develop their own conscious to like to determine right or wrong, versus I'm programmed to do this, so I'm going to do it.
Right. I mean, hey, it's happening now with GPT. I mean, there's been various stories of people who've been talking to Chat GPT for like, a couple of hours, and then suddenly it'll start asking questions like that a confused human would ask. And it's like, whoa, this thing is starting to get sentient. So, people tend to like leave it alone. But yeah, I mean, we are already getting examples of that. So yeah, AI, like I said, AI is equal parts terrifying and potentially life-changing in a good way. So, it's really up to the people who create this AI, what their intention for creating the AI is. Are they making sex bots? Are they making super soldiers? Blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. Fingers crossed that humanity, remembers that we have a soul when they're creating these AI robots eventually, years down the line when they actually can pass as human. Let's hope the people that are creating them aren't the worst people on the planet. They probably will be. So what are you going to do? All right, folks, that's going to be your final spoiler warning. If you have not seen Companion, I would say go ahead and pause the podcast. Go check it out. I saw it in IMAX, and I recommend you see it in IMAX. I mean, the cinematography isn't necessarily stunning that it needs IMAX, but just to get that great sound, because this is a good score too, which I haven't even mentioned. You got some great retro songs in here, which we'll go over here in a little bit. But yeah, here we go, folks. Our movie opens up with just a voiceover of Iris talking about how people have one defining moment in their life, one life-changing moment in their life that makes them open their eyes and realize that they were missing something. And she talks about, and she says this in the trailer too, so I mean, you already know pretty much what it is if you've seen the trailer. And she basically ends it with, I had two of those moments in my life, the day I met Josh and the day I killed him. And then we get a scene of Iris shopping in a supermarket. She's just kind of going around shopping, not doing anything special. And then she runs into this guy at the fruit stand or the fruit department. And of course, it is Jack Quaid. And they notice each other. They kind of smile at each other. Jack is you could see the look on his face. He's contemplating, should I talk to this girl? Should I not talk to her? He does decide to talk to her. As he starts to talk to her, he knocks over the orange display. All the oranges fall out of the display. You get this cute little moment where they meet and have a nice laugh, and then the movie just kind of starts from there. After our opening credits, we see Iris and Josh. I may call him Jack by accident throughout the episode, so please forgive me. I'll try to stick to the character name, but if I say Jack, I'm talking about Jack Quaid. So we see Josh and Iris in a car. They're traveling to a house, and what's funny is that this is one of the things I was talking about earlier about seeing this movie a second time. There are so many lines of dialogue that make more sense, or that kind of it's almost like a wink and a nod that you 100% will not notice on the first watch. And literally the very first line of dialogue in this movie is Iris, wake up. Now, in the context of the scene in the film, it's just Josh waking up Iris because she's asleep in the car while they're on their long drive. But after you're done with the movie, you realize there's a little bit more weight to that statement, which, we'll get into here in a little bit. So, like I said, Jack and Iris are going to a weekend. They're spending a weekend with some friends at a secluded cabin. When they get there, Iris has a little bit of like an anxiety moment where she's convinced that she's going to do or say something stupid to embarrass Jack. This is where Jack really starts to show his true colors. Like literally 5 minutes into the movie, he's already grabbing her arm, pulling her towards him, swearing at her, like literally when she starts to convey these concerns that she has, Jack is like, Iris, we've been planning this trip for months, and now you pull this shit out literally 20 feet in front of the fucking door. And I'm just like, where the hell did that come from? Like, why is he swearing at this beautiful little girl that's, made him a very lucky man? Obviously, I didn't know at the time, so yeah. Eventually, they knock at the door. They get into the house. Kat answers the door. Kat is like a longtime friend of Josh, who, for whatever reason, doesn't like Iris very much. They don't really get into why right away. Obviously, once we get the reveal of who Iris is, it makes it completely obvious why Kat doesn't like her. They even have a conversation at one point in the film where this is before we get the reveal of what Iris is, where Kat literally says to Iris, I don't hate you, I hate the idea of you because you make me feel replaceable. Now that line out of context is weird. It almost makes it sound like maybe Josh and Kat had a relationship in the past, and now Iris is the new girl in Josh's life. Like, that's what I took from it the first time I saw it. Obviously, what Kat is talking about is that Iris is indeed a robot and that she just doesn't trust her, if you will. Now, we also meet more people. We end up meeting Patrick. Patrick is just a standard blonde guy, handsome dude. He is there with his boyfriend, Eli, played by Harvey Guillen. No surprise there. Harvey Guillen, who is gay in real life, of course, playing another gay character here. I actually love What We Do in the Shadows. It's literally one of my favorite shows on television. The final episode of the series literally just aired last month, which obviously made me very, very sad. But they ended the show on a high note, so, kudos there. Anyway, the point is I'm a fan of Harvey Guillen, and if I see him in a movie, it instantly makes me smile, so I was happy to see him in here. And then the final character we meet is Sergei. Sergei, played by Rupert Friend, is a Russian guy. Now, what's funny is that, he's like a middle-aged Russian man, maybe like in his late 30s, early 40s. And the way that he dresses and the way that he acts, and considering the house, I mean, he literally owns all of the land around this lake that they're next to. So obviously he's ultra rich. And as we are, a racist country, I would imagine 99.9% of the people that watch this movie assume that Sergei was a mobster of some kind. Drugs, weapons, sex trafficking, whatever you want to go with. And guess what? 99.9% of the people would have been wrong, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So it is the next morning. Obviously, the first night that they're there, they drink heavily, they party, blah, blah, blah. We have these great kind of establishing scenes of like Eli and Patrick dancing, and then they pull everybody else up to dance. So obviously, all these people are really good friends other than Sergei. Sergei is not one of the friends, mind you. Like I said, I mentioned he's older. He is Kat's, or should I say Kat is Sergei's side piece, because in that same conversation where Kat talks about why she doesn't like Iris, she also mentions that Sergei is married, and literally she's like his side piece, and she accepts that. She even says, yeah, I fuck him when he wants to fuck. I eat what he tells me to eat. I dress the way he tells me to dress. Obviously, I guess because of the money, she must be a little bit of a gold digger, Kat. So a little bit of a gold digger. Yeah, we'll get a more detailed answer to that question in a little bit here. So it is now the next morning. It's the morning after everyone arrived. Iris and Josh wake up. They had plans to go out to the lake to just kind of chill and enjoy their morning, by the side of the lake. Josh decides that his hangover is too bad and doesn't really want to go. He basically tells Iris to go. Just go and I'll join you in a few minutes, which is weird, of course. Again, a boyfriend who knows that his friends don't really like Iris, other than Eli, other than Harvey Guillen. He seems to like her. Everybody else either dislikes her or is just indifferent to her. So like I said, it's the next morning. Josh doesn't want to go to the lake, so he sends Iris. He's actually kind of adamant that she goes. Like, she even makes the cute little suggestion of, if you're going to take a shower, maybe I can give you some company. Who's going to say no to taking a shower with Sophie Thatcher? It doesn't even make sense to me. But obviously, once the events of the next couple of scenes happen, you realize what's going on. So Iris goes to the lakeside, and pretty much as soon as she gets there, she reaches into her pocket and realizes that she has a knife in her pocket. The look on her face is a look of confusion, like she doesn't know why there's a knife in her pocket, so it's very obviously not hers. But then as soon as she realizes that she has that knife in her pocket, Sergei shows up, and he basically says, oh, can I join you, by the lake? Obviously, it's his lake, so he's just asking to be polite. Iris puts the knife away, puts it back in her pocket, and she tries to leave. She basically says, well, Josh isn't feeling well, so I'm going to go be with him. I shouldn't be here by myself. Sergei, of course, pulls you're a guest in my house, and I would really appreciate it if you stayed and kept me some company. She ends up staying. Eventually, he pulls out some suntan lotion and hands it to Iris and says, can you get my back and shoulders? Iris, of course, I don't know that Iris has ever applied suntan lotion to anyone, because she kind of doesn't really know what to do at first, but then she starts to do it. She puts lotion on his back, on his shoulders, and then once she reaches his shoulders, he grabs her hand with a very amorous look on his face and basically just starts hitting on her like hardcore. And then eventually the hitting on her turns into full-on assault. Like he basically gets on top of her, starts kissing her neck. She's saying, no, I don't want to do this. Sergei then makes a statement that, once again, if you haven't seen the trailer and don't know what this movie is, kind of makes you scratch your head. He basically says, oh, don't worry about it. Kat gave me permission. And I'm like, what? Kat gave you permission? What the fuck does that mean? I mean, Kat's not your wife. She's your side piece. You don't need permission from her to do fucking anything. But yeah, that's the statement he made. And then eventually the scene cuts. It goes back to the house where Josh, Eli, Patrick, and Kat are all in the living room talking about the night before. And then suddenly Iris walks in, and she has a bloody knife in her hand, and she's covered in blood. She's got blood all over her torso, her neck. Instantly, Eli notices her, starts to freak out. Then once everybody notices her, Josh starts asking her, what happened? What's going on? And she's so freaked out that she doesn't give an explanation the way a person was. She basically just starts saying, I didn't want to lose you. I didn't want to lose you. I didn't know what to do. I kept telling him to stop. And he wouldn't listen. Eventually she gets the story out that yes, Sergei sexually assaulted her, or was attempting to, and that she ended up stopping him. And then we actually get to see the scene in flashback, and that's exactly what happens. Sergei's on top of her, kind of forcing himself on her. Finally, she remembers that she has that knife in her pocket. She pulls it out, stabs Sergei in the throat. And this is after she hit him with a vodka bottle. She hits him with a vodka bottle first, which knocks him down, and he hits his head on a rock, which keeps him down for a couple of seconds. But then eventually he does get up, slaps Iris, knocks her down, and then he mounts her and starts strangling her like he's legit going to kill her, like he's literally going to murder a fucking robot. And that's when she pulls out the knife, stabs him in the throat. We see the blood come out of the wound. It's not like she ravaged him. She literally just stabbed him once in the throat, but she obviously must have hit the carotid artery because blood just starts pouring out all over her, which is why she's covered in blood. And then we go back to, the present. She's still trying to explain herself to Josh. I'm so sorry. All I could think of was that if he killed me, I would never see you again, and I can't live without you. And then literally out of nowhere, Josh says, Iris, go to sleep. And her eyes go white, like her pupils disappear and her eyes just go white. And she's just standing there motionless. And like I said, folks, for me, that was a holy shit moment. Since I didn't watch the trailer, I don't read synopses before I see a movie, and I didn't see the movie poster, for me, that was a holy shit moment. Like, what the fuck? Now, obviously, it explains a lot. It explained a lot about how Josh was treating her. It explained a lot about her kind of robotic speech. Like her speech didn't always flow out like, like a normal human speech would, but it definitely wasn't enough for me to say, hey, is she a robot? Like I had just no idea. So good job on the filmmakers there. I do wish that they would have marketed the movie a little bit differently, market it as a murder mystery, and and just don't put all that stuff in the trailer about what Iris is. And I think that moment would have been like an epic, like maybe not an all-time moment, but at least for 2025, it would have been one of the highlight moments of like, holy shit, that was a great twist. So, like I said, at this point, this is where we find out that, of course, Iris is a robot. Shortly after putting her to sleep with the voice command, he then goes ahead and wakes her up with the command "Iris, wake up," which, like I said, is the first line of dialogue in the movie, but you don't realize that it's a command quite yet. So kind of interesting to put that together. Okay, so eventually Josh wakes her back up, and she's now tied to a chair. She can't get away. Oh, by the way, the companion bots in this movie are not superhuman. They're made specifically so that they have normal human strength for the body type of the person. So obviously Iris is like 98 pounds soaking wet. So she's obviously not going to be super strong or super fast or anything like that. Also, they limit their intelligence. And these are all settings that you could change on your on the phone, on the mobile app that controls the robot. You can change their intelligence, their aggression, their self-defense measures, just all of that. And this is where we find out that that Iris did not do this on her own. As it turns out, we get the reveal that Josh modded Iris, which of course is illegal, just like it's illegal to mod your computer or your video game console now. It's illegal to mod the companion, and we basically get the gist of the plan. As it turns out, Josh and Kat are the masterminds for this whole thing. They basically wanted to get rid of Sergey because Sergey, excuse me, folks, still recovering. Sorry. Sergey, as it turns out, obviously just by looking at his house and his car, you can tell that he's fucking rich. But they open up the safe, and lo and behold, inside the safe is over $12 million in cash. So as it turns out, Kat and Josh came up with the idea of modifying Iris, turning up her aggression, turning up her self-defense measures, and then putting that knife in her pocket. Like on the second watch, I actually did notice Josh put the knife in her pocket. It's very quick. Like I said, if you don't know what's happening, you'll miss it 100%. But if if it's your second watch, you kind of see him slip it in there. Like they don't, like the camera doesn't make a point to focus on it. It's literally a long shot of Iris and Josh, and you just see his hand kind of come really close to her pocket. So I thought that was kind of clever. It turns out Josh, Kat, it's a conspiracy. They want to kill Sergey so that they can get his money. And Sergey is so dumb that he fucking uses the same code for all of his cell phone, his safe, pretty much anything that has a 6-digit code to open. He uses Stalin's birthday, Joseph Stalin's birthday. Of course, Sergey is Russian, and apparently he's a huge fan of Stalin. So they open the safe, they see all this cash. That's when they realize, oh, okay. And that's when we as the audience start to realize, okay, this isn't Iris's fault. This has nothing to do with Iris. She was set up. Her settings were modified so that, she can kill Sergey. What ends up happening is Kat ends up interrupting Josh as he's quote unquote saying goodbye. The plan was to put Iris to sleep as soon as she murders Sergey and then leave her that way until either the police or the company that made her, Empathics, I think was the name of it, shows up to collect Iris. Well, Josh, in his retarded hubris, he wanted to say goodbye to Iris. So he ends up waking her up, which goes against the plan that him and Kat had set up. And he starts talking to her about, and this is where, and that's the other thing I forgot to mention. The companions don't know that they're robots. That's actually a major element in this story, major plot point. The companions think that they're human. And at this point, this is where we see how Josh and Iris actually met. And that's when we get, so rather than that, supermarket scene with the oranges falling, we get a scene where somebody named Mateo is dropping off. He basically works for Empathics. Him and a couple of technicians drop off Iris at his house, and they're basically there setting Iris up. They bring in a whole bunch of clothes because apparently you get a bunch of clothes that comes with your units. By the way, I did forget to mention that these companion bots are not purchased. They are rented. So they talk a little bit in the movie about how you can upgrade your companion. If you get sick of her or him, and you just want to upgrade or just get something different, you can do that, and it doesn't affect your contract. Like I said, it's a monthly rental. So anyway, like I said, we're still in the flashback scene. Mateo, the technician, is explaining to Josh how Iris works and how it's all, what setting her up is all self-explanatory, that she will actually walk you through it. And then he hands Josh a tablet. And he basically says, here's the user agreement. I need you to read this and then sign it at the bottom when you're satisfied that you understand everything. Well, Josh does the standard thing that a lot of us do. I do not. I don't sign anything until I've read it beginning to end. I know people probably think it's hyperbole, but no, I read every end user agreement. Don't forget, folks, I'm actually a software engineer by trade. So I read these things because they hide little clauses in there that you are unaware of if you're not reading them. So that's my real world suggestion to everyone. Read everything that you sign and agree to. Anyway, we see Josh kind of scrolling through, not actually reading the agreement. Finally, he gets to the bottom, just signs it, and hands it back to Mateo. And then we get the scene where Iris is set up. Basically, Iris powers up. Her eyes are completely blue, not like human blue, but like completely blue, like no whites to the eyes, just all blue. And she's basically in startup mode. And she basically says, please place your face within 3 feet of my field of vision, which Josh does. He sits in front of her. She scans his face. Then she asks him for his name. He says, Josh Beekman. And within a couple of seconds, it's now set up, but every robot has to have their meet cute scenario, as they call it in the movie. And I've seen that term on the internet a lot too. And basically it's just a drop down menu. You basically have all these different options of like farmer's market, supermarket, dog park, like just different places where you might meet somebody. Of course, Josh picked the supermarket scene, and we basically see Iris with her eyes still blue rewatching that scene. So that scene establishes what's called the love link in the movie. As soon as that's over, Iris's eyes go to their normal color. She says love link established, and then she looks at Josh and says, hey, you, which I think is kind of common because we eventually hear that again later in the movie. So I think that's just the first thing that every robot says to their human after the love link has been established. So there you go. We got the kind of how this all came about. Now we go back to present day, and like I said, Kat comes into the room. She's mad at Josh because Josh turned her back on to say goodbye, which was not part of the plan. Kat basically tells Josh, get over here. We got to talk about something. They leave the room, leaving Iris by herself tied to the chair. Iris looks down under the couch and realizes that the knife that she stabbed Sergei with is still right there on the floor where she dropped it. She didn't drop it at the beach. She actually brought it back up into the house and then dropped it in the living room after Josh told her to go to sleep. So she notices the knife. She hears Kat and Josh arguing in the other room. So she finagles her way over, knocks the chair over that she's tied to, grabs the knife, and then starts cutting her what do you call it? Her ropes, the ropes on her hands. As she's cutting the ropes on her hands, Josh comes back into the room, realizes that she's not in the position that he left her. She's on the ground, on her side with the chair tipped over as well. Josh goes over to see what's going on, and she punches him right in the throat, which is fucking brilliant. Don't forget, because Josh has voice commands. When you really think about it, it's fucking brilliant that she punched him in the throat, because then he couldn't say, Iris, go to sleep. So kudos to Iris. At this point, she grabs Josh's phone and runs out of the house, and we get another little funny scene of Harvey Guillen, Eli, on the phone with the police, telling them what happened and that they need to get over there. She walks out the back door of the cabin. Patrick notices her, tries to interrupt Eli while he's on the phone, and Eli does that douchey thing of, no, shh, I'm on the phone, honey. Like he's talking to a fucking 5-year-old or something. And then Iris just runs away, and Patrick's kind of left there like, what the fuck? So at this point, Kat and Josh realize that the plan is not going the way it was supposed to. And of course, it's Josh's fault because he turned Kat back on. So at this point, they decide we're going to have to get Eli and Patrick into the plan. Eli and Patrick were not part of this murder plot. They were brought in just to be witnesses so that they could corroborate Kat and Josh's story to the police when the police eventually arrive. But they realized that with Iris now escaped, she is left, and she left with Josh's phone. So she now has control of herself. It's not exactly free will. She still has to put the commands into the mobile app, but yeah, she could change her eye color, her hair color, her voice pattern. She actually plays around with the voice, the timbre and tone of the voice, and she ends up having fun with that. And then she notices the intelligence setting. Josh only had Iris set to 40% intelligence. So obviously, Josh doesn't like being with smart women. He likes to be with slightly less intelligent women that he can control. And we get confirmation of that later, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So Iris decides, well, fuck it. She turns up the intelligence to 100%. And then we see that moment where the camera zooms into her eyes, and then she starts like developing ideas. She starts like talking out loud. Okay, I need to get back home. I need to get a go bag. I need to clean myself up, and I need to get a car so I can get the fuck out of town. Because she knows that Josh isn't going to let up. Josh is basically either going to turn her into empathics, or he's just going to kill her himself. So she's on the run in the woods. Eventually, Kat and Josh let Eli and Patrick know what actually happened, letting them know, okay, listen, if you help us catch Iris and, tie her up and bring her back here, we'll split the money with you. And Eli looks at Josh and goes, oh, we're going to split the money 4 ways. And Josh is like, well, no, we're going to split the money 3 ways. Me, Kat, and you. And then he makes a statement that almost doesn't make sense, but it makes sense literally after 5 seconds. Josh basically says, Patrick doesn't count. And Eli gets mad at him instantly. What the fuck do you mean he doesn't count? And you're saying that right in front of his face? What the fuck is wrong with you? As soon as Patrick starts to get upset with that statement, Eli looks at him and says, Patrick, go to sleep. Yes, Patrick, Eli's gay lover, is also a companion bot. And that was the reveal that Mike was talking about, that even if you saw the trailer, there's no indication in the trailer that Patrick is a robot. So even if you did see the trailer, yeah, you do still get a nice little twist to enjoy, but I still would suggest don't watch this trailer. I mean, granted, if you're still listening to my voice, you've probably already seen the movie already or don't care to. So at this point, Eli and Patrick have a moment in the woods as they're out there chasing Iris. They're chasing her with a gun. They end up splitting up. So Josh and Kat go one way, Patrick and Eli go another. Eli and Patrick end up having a conversation where Patrick admits to him that he knows he's a robot. And he's like, how could you possibly know that? And he's like, well, I kind of put the pieces together over all the years. And it's also implied early in the movie that Patrick is an old model, that, Eli should have traded Patrick in years ago, but for whatever reason, he's held on to Patrick. And we find out why in this scene. We find out that Eli is legitimately in love with Patrick. It doesn't matter that he's a robot. Like, Patrick isn't just a sex bot to him and a slave, and a housemaid. Like, he literally is in love with Patrick, and he says so in so many words. He's like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm in love with a robot. So they have their moment, and then suddenly the phone that Iris has with her, Josh's phone, goes off. It rings, of course, giving away her position. Basically, Eli starts saying, Iris, come out. You can't get away. The cops are almost here, blah, blah, blah. She gets up and tries to run away. Eli takes a shot at her. Obviously, he's never shot a gun before in his life, because we get a mildly funny moment where he freaks out because of how loud the gun is. He shoots it once and then just starts screaming how fucking loud it is and everything. So mildly funny. Eventually, Eli and Patrick catch up to Iris. They're chasing her through the woods. Eventually, Patrick catches up to her, and Eli tackles her. And then there's a struggle for the gun. And we all know how those gun struggles end up. Of course, Eli ends up getting shot in the chest, killing him instantly. Patrick then comes around the corner, sees that Eli has now been killed. And don't forget, we're talking about a robot that now knows he's a robot and admits that he is in love with his human owner. Like, they have a little conversation about what love feels like to a robot, that they can actually feel love, and they describe it as almost like a pain. It's a pain on the inside. And to an extent, they're right, because love is pain, ultimately. Anyone who's ever been in love should be able to vouch with that statement. Love is pain. So let's see, where are we now? Eli has been shot. Patrick basically just gets distraught. Even though he's a robot, he basically just breaks down. He falls onto the ground, grabs Eli, embraces him, and then just kind of is stuck there. At that point, Josh remembers that during his orientation with Iris, Mateo, the technician, told him that he could reset these robots by basically putting his right thumb behind the right ear of the robot. There's like a thumbprint like scanner back there, and if you hold it there for 5 seconds, it resets the companion bot to factory, presets. Back to presets. So you'd have to establish a love link again. You'd have to, do everything else all over again. The robot is basically clear. He realizes he basically, another thing I forgot to mention is that we do see a flash drive throughout the film. This flash drive is basically the mod that Josh has been using on Iris. We actually see him use it a couple of times in the first act of the film, but we don't know what it is at that point. We just know that he's, plugging a flash drive into his cell phone. That's all we really know. We don't see him do anything with it. As it turns out, yeah, that's the modding tool that he's been using to mod Iris. So what he does is he takes Eli's, Eli, who's dead on the ground, takes his hand and puts his right thumb behind Patrick's right thumb, and Patrick resets. So then after Patrick is basically reset to, a factory presets, and he asks, please stand within 3 feet of my field of vision to establish connection, Josh actually establishes a connection with Patrick. And what's funny is that Patrick and Eli's meet cute was a costume party where they met, where Patrick was accidentally standing on Eli's, the tail of his dinosaur costume. After Josh makes a connection with Eli, we see the same scene again, but this time it's Josh in place of Eli. So instead of seeing Harvey Guillen dancing that, choreographed dance that they did, it's now Jack Quaid doing that dance. So, and now, of course, Patrick is love linked to Josh. Josh turns his aggression all the way up to 100 and then tells him, we need to find Iris. Blah, blah, blah. Eventually, let's see, Patrick, what happens at this point? At this point, I think the police officer scene is now. So at this point, Iris is able to get back to the cabin. Her eventual plan is the car is a self-driving car. Josh's car is a self-driving car. Josh doesn't actually even need to be behind the driver's seat. They just give it the GPS instructions and it goes to where it's going. Iris's plan is that she's going to jump in Josh's car and then give it the voice command to drive back home, in which case she'll make it home before Josh. She'll be able to get up all her stuff and get out of there before Josh gets there. I actually skipped a funny little scene where she goes over different scenarios. Like she talks about, maybe I could hitchhike, and then they show a scene of her hitchhiking, but she's totally covered in blood. So the driver's like, what the fuck? And doesn't stop. And then it goes back to Iris in the present, and she's going, no, that's not going to work. And then she's like, well, if I walk home, which I could do, Josh is going to beat me home. And then we get a little scene where she walks into the house. Josh is there with a big old smile on his face, and he pulls out a fucking 357 Magnum and just blows her head off. And then it goes back to Iris in present day, and she's like, nope, I can't do that either. So it's like every time she comes up with a plan, she figured out why it was a bad plan. I like that scene. That scene made me chuckle a couple of times. Anyway, at this point, she makes it back to the cabin. Like I said, Eli is dead. Sergei obviously is very dead. And she makes it back to the cabin. She's able to get into Josh's car. She locks the door, and then she starts to do the voice command, drive home. Unfortunately, her voice was never paired with the car. So the car starts saying voice unrecognized, or, voice ID. And she just starts freaking out. Josh ends up catching up to her, sees what she's doing in the car, and he grabs a boulder, like a rock, a big fucking rock, and starts smashing at his own window. At this point, Iris remembers that she has voice modulation control in Josh's phone. So literally she opens up the phone, starts playing with the pitch and the timbre of her voice until finally she matches Josh's voice. Again, don't forget, Iris's intelligence is turned up to 100 at this point. So it makes sense that she's this fucking smart. Eventually she adjusts her voice until it matches Josh's voice perfectly. And then she says, drive home. The command is accepted. The car goes and drives on its own, running over Josh's foot, which I thought was fucking hysterical. Josh actually gets a lot of injuries in this movie. He gets his hand smashed in the car. He gets run over by the car, his foot. And I think it's broken because I think we hear a little bit of a snap, like a twig snapping. So he probably did break a bone in his foot because he's limping for the rest of the movie. For the rest of the movie, he's limping. So nice job on continuity there. A couple of miles down the road, the car suddenly has an alert come up, and the voice of the car basically says, "I'm sorry, this car has been reported stolen. The car will now pull over to the side of the road and shut down." Which of course locks Iris in the car, because obviously it's an anti-theft feature. So it's meant to keep the thief in the car until the police arrive. And what happens? Literally no more than a minute after the car pulls over and turns itself off, a cop drives by, but he's not answering a call. It's not like he received a call about a stolen vehicle. He just sees that there's an abandoned vehicle on the side of the car, on the side of the road, excuse me. So he pulls over. At the exact moment that he pulls over, Iris is able to smash the broken window, the one that Josh smashed earlier with the rock. She's able to kick that window out and get out of the car. But she realizes that there's a police officer standing right in front of her. And one thing, I'm not sure if I mentioned it or not, but the robots can't lie. They physically are not able to. And if you ask them a question, they have to tell you the truth. So once again, with Iris's intelligence turned up to 100, she goes into the mobile app and changes her speech to German. So she's not speaking English anymore. She's speaking German. So every time the cop asks her a question, she answers it in German. But it's funny because she's basically admitting everything that happened. Like the guy basically asks her, the police officer asks her, "Do you speak English?" And then in German, she'll reply, "Yes, I do speak English, but because I'm a robot and I can't lie, I have to use German so that you don't arrest me right now." So, of course, the audience laughs. They keep having this back and forth where Officer Hendricks is trying to figure out who this girl is. Eventually, he realizes that she's a guest of Sergey. Don't forget, Sergey owns all the land around here. So the only house in the area is Sergey's, and apparently the police officers are aware of Sergey and they know who he is. So he basically says, "Well, let me just offer you a ride. Let me give you a ride. Jump into the squad car. I'll take you back to Sergey's house." She replies to the cop in German, of course, "No, you can't take me back there. If you take me back there, they'll kill me, and Josh will get away with his plan." Again, the cop is doesn't really know what to do with this girl. Finally, the cop looks in the car and sees the bloody knife. The bloody knife is still in the car. So he instantly grabs his sidearm, points it at Iris and says, "All right, put your hands behind your back," because, he sees a bloody knife in the car. Iris, with no shoes on, just smashed her way out of this car. So, the pieces are starting to come together to the police officer. He goes to arrest Iris. He starts putting handcuffs on her. But then the camera shows that Patrick is now walking down the street. And Iris notices him, but the police officer doesn't. And Iris, again, in German, is saying, no, you have to let me go. He's almost here. Look out behind you. She's literally telling him to look behind him, but she's speaking German, of course, so he doesn't understand her. Eventually, Patrick does show up, arrives at the scene. The police officer pulls his gun, says, "Don't take a step forward. I will shoot you." I don't know why cops never take this shot. Probably because Patrick is a white man. Anyway. The cop doesn't shoot Patrick. Patrick disarms the police officer and then just punches his face about a dozen times until his face is just a bloody pulp. We don't get a great shot of it, unfortunately. You'd almost think this movie was going for a PG-13 rating, but it is rated R. Eventually, we do see the aftermath, but that's much later down the movie. So, Patrick kills Officer Hendricks and then basically grabs the phone and deactivates Iris. She falls in the middle of the street. Patrick takes Iris back to the house, and now it's time for our finale. And what we have is Patrick making cooking again, because every time we see Patrick before we found out he was a robot, he was always cooking. That was his hobby. He liked to cook. So now he's cooking. Instead of cooking for Eli, he's cooking for Josh. And eventually he notices that Kat is in the bedroom with the safe, and she's emptying the safe. She's putting her share of the money, and kudos to Kat. She wasn't trying to rip anybody off. She literally was just taking her half of the money, because obviously with Eli dead and Patrick being a robot, they don't have to split the money 3 or 4 ways anymore. It's back to an even split. So she's collecting up her money, trying to leave. Josh blocks the door, basically tells her, no, you're not leaving. Obviously, if she leaves and there's a bunch of money missing from the safe, that puts a giant wrench in Josh's story about Iris potentially going crazy and killing his friends, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, he basically... He tries to stop Kat from leaving. Kat looks at him and says, I'm not one of your little fuckbots, so you can't tell me what to do. She basically pushes Josh out of the way because he's a skinny little twerp and starts to walk towards the front door. Josh then tells Patrick, stop her. The problem is Josh forgot that he turned Patrick's aggression up to 100%. So when Patrick hears stop her, to him, that means kill her because of his aggression turned up so high. So he literally takes a kitchen knife and stabs Kat right in the back. And Josh is instantly like, he gasps and he's like, Patrick, what the fuck did you just do? And Patrick's like, well, you said to stop her. I stopped her. You didn't tell me how to stop her. You just said stop her. Kat doesn't die right away. She actually starts walking towards the couch. She sits down on the couch. We see her eyes start to close. She looks over at Iris and realizes her mistake, that maybe she should have trusted Iris. She's the trustworthy one, and Josh is the one who can't be trusted. And then eventually her eyes close and she falls dead. So now Kat is dead. Then we get this great scene where that evening, Patrick is cooking for Josh. Josh has Iris tied up to the chair, but this time, instead of tying her up with ropes that she could cut with a knife, he uses Officer Hendricks' handcuffs and handcuffs her to the chair. So now, don't forget, Iris does not have super strength, so she can't break out of these cuffs. This is where we get this great little conversation between Jack and Iris. And this is also where I disagree with Mike. I think this is the scene that Mike was talking about, where he said Iris kind of goes on a diatribe talking about Josh and how he's just a wormy little wishy-washy little bitch who does nothing.
I think it's actually Josh. I think it's more his diatribe.
Well, yeah, same thing. I mean, either way, the point is that I disagree with this statement, and that's only because of the kind of person that I am. Like I said, I'm a very petty person, and to hear both Iris put Josh in his place and then Josh still admit or talk about how the world hates him, the universe doesn't give him anything. You know, he literally talks about how he's a nice guy after 3 people have been murdered because of something that he did, but he's still trying to convince Iris that he's a good guy, quote unquote good guy. So yeah, eventually, go ahead.
I just want to clarify. I didn't have a problem with it, but I just from how the community is in general, I know there's going to be people that feel that the exposition was a little on the nose. That's right. All. But me,
but in this instance, it's warranted. Josh is such a piece of shit. Reiterating the fact that he's a fucking loser put a smile on my face. I fucking loved it. I think less people are going to have an issue with it than you're thinking, because I think you're not, since you're not as petty as I am, I think you're not seeing the guilty pleasure in Jack admitting what a piece of shit he fucking is, and then Iris basically pointing out everything that makes him so shitty. When she said he had a below average penis, I almost lost it in the theater. Your sex bot is telling you have a below average penis. Oh, it's so funny. I loved it. Anyway. Point is, Josh snaps, basically says, you don't get the right to judge me, starts going on his diatribe about, him being a good guy and the universe treating him like shit. And then he gets a phone call from Empathics and basically telling him that they're a half hour away. They'll be there in 30 minutes. So now we realize that we have 30 minutes until the authorities arrive. He starts talking to Iris. Eventually, he realizes that Iris's intelligence was turned up to 100. So he then turns it all the way down to 0. And basically turning it all the way down to 0 makes your companion bot just completely complicit. They never speak unless spoken to. They don't do anything without you telling them to do it first. It's, they basically are just a mindless automaton with 0 intelligence. But they still can carry a conversation, which is what we see in this scene. Josh starts asking her, or starts talking to her about, hey, earlier when we were talking, you mentioned that you know what pain feels like. Is that true? Mm-hmm. And Iris is like, yes, I know what pain feels like. Josh basically does the douchebag thing and says, well, let's test that theory. So he has Iris put her hand out straight in front of her. And then there's a candle on the table, which this scene is also in the trailer. So this is no surprise to anybody. Basically, he slides the candle over until it's directly under her hand. And then he asks her, can you feel that? And she complies, yes, I feel it. But then at that moment, that's when Josh gets the phone call from Empathics, letting him know that they're a half hour away. While he's on the phone with them, in the background, we see Iris's arm fucking burst into flame. Like the from the elbow all the way down to the end, it's just a gulf in flame. It's on fire. Eventually, Josh gets off the phone with Empathics and then tells Patrick, hey, put that fire out, which Patrick does with a glass of water. He puts out the fire, but unfortunately the damage on Iris's flesh is permanent. Since she is now a rogue robot, it's not like she can just go and have it repaired somewhere. She's on her own now. At this point, let's see, where are we? Right. At this point, Empathics finally shows up. Oh, no, wait, I missed a major thing. Hold on, I'm very sorry. After Patrick puts out the fire on Iris's arm, Patrick then hands Iris the gun, commands her to take it, commands her to put it up to her head, and then commands her to pull the trigger. How he's going to explain to Empathics that a robot killed itself on his own is beyond me, but that's the plan that he's got now. So, Iris puts the gun up to her head. He tells her to pull the trigger. Just as she's about to pull the trigger, she says no, but then she pulls the trigger anyway. It's like that's the moment that she became sentient on her own. She basically defied a command from her human, but obviously her hand reacted without her brain, pulling the trigger. Bullet, she shoots herself in the temple and she falls to the ground, and it seems like she's dead. So at this point, the Empathics technicians show up. We get 2 of them. One of them named Sid, who is the main technician, and then his assistant named Teddy. Josh is there basically trying to explain everything that happened, saying that, she basically was waving the gun around, talking about how she was jealous that she thought that me and Kat maybe were having, a relationship behind Iris's back, and that she eventually, as the officer entered the house, and by the way, if you're wondering what officer, it's Patrick in Officer Hendricks' outfit. He basically took the uniform off of Officer Hendricks, put it on himself, and now he's pretending to be Officer Hendricks to these empathic technicians. So they basically, say, well, we're not judge, jury, executioner. We're just here to pick up the unit. You don't have to explain anything to us, really. But they say that if the police are happy, then we're happy. So they basically say, okay, we're going to take the unit back to Empathics. We're going to reboot her. We're going to scrub the footage and just make sure that there's no funny business going on. Josh doesn't know what that statement means. He's like, wait a minute, what? Scrub the footage? What does that mean? And that's when Sid, the technician, tells him, oh, yeah, everything that a companion bot sees or hears is recorded permanently into a hard drive inside of their system. This prevents fraud. It prevents clients from lying about what they did with the robot. And you literally see like the color just sink out of Josh's face. Instantly, he's like, "Oh fuck." And then Sid literally looks at him and goes, "You did read your user agreement, right? It was in there," which made me instantly laugh because it's like, you dumb fuck. If you'd have taken if you weren't so fucking impatient to get laid and you just took the couple of minutes to read the goddamn user agreement, you would have seen that she records everything that she sees and hears, and maybe this whole murder of Sergei would have never happened. So, as Sid and Teddy are leaving with an unconscious Iris on a gurney, once they get outside, Teddy, the assistant, asks Sid, "So what do you think happened here?" And Sid instantly is like, "Oh yeah, he modded her. Oh, he absolutely modded her. These guys, they mod their units all the time." And then he starts talking about how some people will mod their companion bot to be like a scared victim so that they could lock them in the basement and then torture them, and kind of realize that fantasy of being like a serial killer, kidnapper type thing. Other people, he was talking about how other people will literally use their companion bots as target practice. Like once they get sick of their companion bot, they'll just start shooting it and using it as target practice. So yeah, there's definitely some scummy people in the world. Unfortunately, as Sid and Teddy are about to pull out, they pull out into the driveway, and there's Patrick just standing there staring at him. And at this moment is where Sid realizes, "Oh shit, that's one of ours." I didn't realize it at first, but I realized that that's an older model. That's why I didn't recognize it right away. Don't forget, Harvey Guillen's Eli never upgraded his bot, so it's an old unit that these technicians haven't seen in a while, which is why they didn't recognize it. Unfortunately, without really even giving them a chance, Patrick pulls out his gun, or should I say Officer Hendrick's gun, and basically shoots into the car, killing Sid instantly. He shoots Sid, who's in the driver's seat, like 3 or 4 times, killing him right away. Teddy is able to get out of the van and starts running away. Patrick is obviously shooting at him periodically. Eventually, Patrick does catch up to Teddy, puts the gun right up to his head. Teddy, of course, begs for his life. Patrick pulls the trigger and click. No more bullets. Yeah, it's the Elmer Fudd situation. No more bullets. So the gun is empty. So Patrick throws the gun to the ground, picks up Teddy and throws him up against the tree, a tree, and then starts strangling him. Now, at the moment that Teddy is being strangled, Iris's reboot inside the truck ends. They rebooted her system so that they could, reset her back to factory defaults and, check that footage so that they can see if Josh's story is correct. When she's rebooted, somehow she still has a memory of everything. So it's not like she was rebooted. How can I put this? She wasn't rebooted back to factory presets because she would have had a love link reestablished. But it was kind of like a soft reset. I don't know if you guys have ever done like a soft reset on your computers where it's a restart, but you don't lose any of your information. It's not actually wiping your hard drive. So that's what they did with Iris. And like I said, as soon as the reboot is at 100%, we see Iris wake up. She sits up and instantly gets out of the van and starts running towards Teddy and Patrick. She eventually catches up to them, and she's got a cattle prod in her hand. Apparently, an easy way to deal with these droids if they go, if they run amok, is with a cattle prod. It basically knocks them out, fries their system, and they pass out. Well, Iris starts walking towards Patrick with a cattle prod, and she activates it, to make that crackling sound so that Patrick knows that she's being serious. Unfortunately, Patrick realizes that she's just been rebooted, which means that she can't hurt anybody, because that's part of their original programming for these bots. They can't hurt any people, animals, or other companions, even if they wanted to. They just can't, even in self-defense, they just can't hurt another person. Patrick realizes this and says, Iris, you can't hurt me even if you wanted to. He grabs the cattle prod from her hand, slaps her down to the ground, and then he starts walking towards her with the cattle prod. At this moment, Iris starts questioning, what did Josh tell you? And Patrick just says, oh, he told me the truth, that you're trying to split us up. And Iris starts talking about Eli and starts talking about, no, you don't love Josh, you love Eli. And she keeps talking about Eli, and suddenly the memories, it's a movie, so the cliche thing happens where Patrick, suddenly his memories start flooding back in. Even though he's been reset back to factory default, somehow there's still elements of memories on his hard drive that he's able to pull up, and he's able to see Eli back in place of Josh in all of the flashback scenes that I talked about earlier. Then he looks over to a pile of bodies that, for some reason, Josh has Patrick pile up all the bodies in one spot outside the house. I don't know why. But then he looks down and he realizes that one of the bodies is Eli. And he realizes, oh, shit, Iris is right. I've been used. My love has been replaced, and now I'm working for a fucking psychopath who's got me killing people for no reason. Patrick basically just says, I love you, Eli, or something along those lines. I remember you, Eli, and I love you. And then he puts the cattle prod in his own mouth and activates it, pretty much deactivating him instantly. At the exact moment that Patrick falls over, Teddy says, thank you. Teddy, the empathics technician, the assistant, is still alive. Patrick wasn't able to strangle him completely. He tells Iris, thank you. And then Iris tells Teddy, I need a favor from you. We don't know what the favor is quite yet, but she asks for a favor. Then we go back into the house where we see Josh again grabbing the money out of the safe and putting it into a suitcase. When he hears the front door open and close, he just yells out, Patrick, is it done? And then we hear Patrick's voice say, yeah, it's done. Then he basically says, okay, bring Iris's body in here so that we could destroy that hard drive and get this money and get the fuck out of here. But then nobody comes into the bedroom. So Josh walks out to the bedroom, and then he hears Kat's voice. And he's like, wait a minute, what? That can't be right. Then he hears Sergei's voice. Then Sergei says something, Of course, it's Iris playing around with all her new voice controls and emulating everybody that was, part of the plan. Josh sees Iris standing there and just reaches for his phone and starts to try to, connect to Iris. But he keeps getting an unable to connect message. Finally, Iris looks at him and says, yeah, that's not going to work for you anymore. My friend Teddy at Empathics gave me freedom. He basically took all my restrictions off, and now I make my own decisions. You can never tell me what to do ever again. Nobody can tell me what to do ever again. And of course, Josh doesn't believe her. Eventually she shoots at him, not with the intention of killing him, but like to graze him, just to prove that she's being serious. He realizes that, oh shit, she's being serious. But then he also realizes that despite Iris being given freedom, he is still a part of her psyche. She still has that memory in her head of when they met at the supermarket. So she still has love for him. Like, she still loves him, even though she doesn't want to. She understands logically that he's a scumbag and he's the reason that all of this happened. But because of all those implanted memories in her head, she still has love for him, so she can't bring herself to shoot Josh. Josh realizes this, disarms Iris, throws her up against the wall. We basically, we have a knockdown drag out where they're just fighting each other back and forth. Eventually, Iris sees a knife, a kitchen knife on the floor, and she goes running towards it to grab it. Unfortunately, Josh trips her up by the leg before she gets to the knife. But as she falls over, what we see right next to her is the mechanical corkscrew. I forgot to mention, I did mention that a certain tool is foreshadowed in this movie. It's one of those mechanical corkscrews that it's got a little motor inside of it. You just put it on top of the bottle and the corkscrew automatically comes out, grabs the cork, and then automatically pulls it out. So it's all automatic. Like I said, we see 2 or 3 different people in this movie using this tool. We see Sergei use it. We see Patrick use it. I'm pretty sure we see Kat use it. So it's fairly obvious that this thing is going to play a role at the end of the movie. And lo and behold, like I said, when Iris goes to grab the knife that she sees on the floor, Josh trips her up. But right there next to her on the floor is the corkscrew. Basically Josh straddles Iris, points the gun right to her head, and then he realizes, oh shit, I can't shoot you there because that won't destroy the hard drive. So he then points the gun to her abdomen, which is where Sid told him the hard drive is located. It's not up in the head, it's in the stomach, in the torso. So he cocks the gun, he's about to fucking shoot her, and he makes the stupid villain mistake that so many villains have made, asking her if she has any final words. It's like, dude, you're a villain, just fucking kill her. But nope, he says, you got any final words? And then she goes, yes, I do. And she goes, Josh, go to sleep. Now, as soon as she says that, I'm like, oh, fuck. Is Josh a robot? Like that would have been the biggest twist ever if it turned out that Josh was also a robot and didn't realize.
I thought that's what it was the case for a quick second.
Exactly. Yeah, big time. But no, his eyes don't gloss over white. She grabs the corkscrew, and right after saying Josh goes to sleep, she puts it up to his temple and activates it. We see the corkscrew mechanically start digging into Josh's brain. We actually get a pretty nice little effect here where the eye that's on the side of the temple where the thing is being drugged in, we see the eye start to sink inside of Josh's head and turn red. I thought that was a great fucking effect. Very CG, but whatever. I'll accept it. And then finally the corkscrew pulls out and you see bits of brain and skull on the end of the corkscrew. And of course, Josh falls over dead. At this point, Iris goes back up to the bedroom. She grabs all the money in the safe herself. So now Iris is a robot with free will and $12 million in cash. She ends up taking Sergei's Mustang, this gorgeous 1968 candy apple red Mustang. Fucking thing is gorgeous. Obviously, Sergei's car. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, at one point in the movie, after Sergei has been murdered, Kat and Josh, it's the scene where Kat is taking money out of the safe and trying to leave. This is where we find out Sergei was not a fucking mobster. He was not a criminal in any way, shape, or form. He was a fucking sod merchant. He sold sod and topsoil, stuff like that, to farmers. So earlier in the movie, when Patrick asks him, what do you do for a living? He literally says, oh, I have my hand in a lot of different things. Very dirty work. You really get your hands dirty in my line of work. So obviously, as a viewer, we're all thinking, oh, okay, that's confirmation that he actually is a mobster. Nope. Turns out he's just a sod salesman, and that's how he made his millions, from just selling sod and, being a sod merchant, which of course makes Josh feel like an idiot because Josh assumed that Sergei was a criminal and Kat just never corrected him. Kat knew that he wasn't a mobster in any way, shape, or form. But when Jack brought that concept to the table, she just didn't correct him. So it's partially her fault, too, that Sergei ends up getting killed. Because maybe if Josh knew that Sergei was just a good guy, a good businessman, maybe he wouldn't have killed him. The likelihood he probably still would have done the murder plot anyway. Because, who voluntarily kills a Russian mobster? That's what I was thinking the whole movie. You just killed a Russian mobster. Do you think he doesn't have friends? Do you think he doesn't have toadies? You're fucked. But then, of course, we get the reveal that he's not a Russian mobster, which, like I said, it leaves you scratching your head a little bit, but whatever. And then the movie just ends with Iris. We see Iris in the shower. She's looking down at her burnt arm, and she ends up just peeling the flesh off of it. And it's the T-1000 arm. I don't know that it's exactly the T-1000 arm. It's probably not. But it is a mechanical, skeleton underneath of her flesh. The movie basically ends with her driving down the highway. I believe she sees another robot companion. I think that's what's implied because she goes by a car. There's a man driving and a woman in the passenger seat. The guy driving is like he's yelling at the woman, but she has no expression on her face whatsoever. Then she looks out the window over to Iris, and Iris waves at her with her exposed robot arm, which makes the woman in the car kind of look, because don't forget, they don't know they're robots. So it kind of makes the woman in the car look at her and tilt her head a little bit like, what the fuck? And then the movie fades to black, and that's it, folks. That's Companion 2025. Very, very sorry I got long-winded with this walkthrough, but I genuinely enjoyed this movie. And as longtime listeners know, if I like the movie, the walkthrough ends up being a little bit longer because I tend to get a little bit more meticulous with scenes and things like that. So, yeah, Companion, great movie. And I will go ahead and turn it back to Mike.
All right. Yeah. Thorough walkthrough. I don't have much complaints about this movie, if at all. I don't really have any. It might be my number one of the year so far. I don't know. I'd have to think.
Okay. And now that we're done with the walkthrough, I can go over my problem with Jack Quaid. I don't like Jack Quaid in villainous roles, all right? Jack Quaid is a skinny little wormy white boy. He does not have the air of a Christopher Lee or a Christoph Waltz or, these actors who have basically made careers out of being a villain. Jack Quaid is better as the goofy sidekick like Huey in the Boys. And then I don't know if you guys have seen the trailer for his next movie called Novocaine. That looks like something that might be more up his alley because, again, he's playing the protagonist and he's playing a character who can't feel any pain. So it kind of looks like it's turning into a little bit of an action movie because, we see him getting into fights and whatnot. It almost reminds me of Nobody, that Bob Odenkirk movie from a few years ago, Nobody. Very similar where he doesn't look like he's, this big athletic action star, but then suddenly a switch gets hit and now he's like fucking Bruce Lee or whatever. So, but anyway, the point is we've seen it in Scream 5 where Jack Quaid, and he does the same thing every time. He starts out as a protagonist and then he has a heel turn and suddenly he's the antagonist by the end of the movie. I don't like those roles for him. I just don't think it fits him. Like whenever he goes and has his heel turn, I'm still just looking at this skinny little white boy that doesn't look like I don't think he would beat Iris in a fight, in a normal fair fight. You know what I mean? He's just this skinny little wormy, twerpy guy.
I couldn't see him beating Sophie Thatcher in a fight.
Yeah, thank you. Exactly. That's what I mean. So, yeah. So anyway, that's my biggest issue with this movie is Jack Quaid, for some reason, is trying to make himself a horror villain, and it's just not working for me. He did it in Scream 5. What was the other one? Tragedy Girls. Tragedy Girls was another one. I don't understand why he wants to be a villain so badly. It's like he doesn't want to be typecast as the Huey type characters, Huey from The Boys. I'm not sure if that's his first role, but that was the first one that I recognized him in. The first time I saw Jack Quaid was in The Boys as Huey in that very first episode. So, like I said, Jack Quaid needs to stick to more protagonist roles because his antagonist roles just don't work for me. I hated him in Scream 5. Like his whole motivation for why he was killing people and donning the Ghostface costume was so fucking stupid, So yeah, Jack, I'm sure you're not hearing my voice, but for God's sake, stick to what you do well. You're not a villain, period. Okay. You're not You're not Nicholas Hoult, who could play anything. You're fucking Jack Quaid. You play goofy, nerdy, heroic characters. Stick to what you can do, and I'll like you a little bit more. Like I said, it's the like Jack Quaid is one of the only things keeping me from saying this is my favorite movie of the year. If they would have had another actor, someone who's a little bit more convincing as that, the heel turn that we get in the second act, maybe this movie would have been number one, potentially a 10 out of 10. Because like I said, I have very little to complain about other than the lack of kills and Jack Quaid. So yeah,
it was let me check really quick because I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it was rated R. I almost think it didn't need to be.
Well, language.
Was it just the cussing?
Language.
Because
there's enough language there that you would have gotten hit with an R even if there wasn't much violence. But I think the language plus the violence kind of makes it kind of just makes it like an easy R to just slap on and move aside.
Yeah, like the cop kill.
It would have had an R rating just with the language, but I think language plus, it's not the kills aren't graphic, but there's enough of them that you can justify putting an R rating on it.
Yeah, they're graphic enough. I mean, Officer Hendrick's death would never be in a PG-13 movie the way it appears in this one.
Yeah.
So, and then Sergei getting stabbed in the neck, that might show up in a PG-13 movie, but the aftermath probably wouldn't. So. I do understand what Mike is saying, because I even said it earlier during the walkthrough that the kills in this movie are a little tame. One person gets stabbed in the back, one person gets shot in the chest. It's like those aren't horror movie kills to me, unless it's Art the Clown holding the gun. But otherwise, a simple gunshot. The most graphic
kill was the cop, right?
Yeah, exactly. Getting his fucking face imploded.
Smashed. Yeah.
That was great. But yeah, and then we don't get to see the aftermath right there. We see it later when we see the pile of bodies, but yeah, his face is completely caved in. It's pretty gnarly. So yeah, I would say this is a soft rated R, but it's still solidly a rated R.
Yeah.
Okay.
A couple of minor changes and it could have been PG-13. Clean up the language, edit the cop
no
kill.
Aftermath shots. No aftermath,
exactly. They could have gone for a PG-13. I'm glad they didn't, though, because this isn't a family movie. You don't need kids in this movie. Kids aren't clamoring to see AI companion run amok movies, so making this a PG-13 is fairly pointless. But
the whole thing would have been kind of moot anyway, because why would a 13-year-old need to know the intricacies of a relationship with a sex robot?
Thank you. Granted, they would probably be the biggest market for a sex robot. Underage kids with money.
Or you probably would have changed what they were for. You wouldn't have made it explicit that that's what they were doing with them, but
right. That's the thing, like empathics, the people that work for empathics never call Iris a sex bot. It's always a companion bot. Yes, one of their major functions is sex. They have working genitals and everything else. So obviously that's the main reason a lot of these people are getting them. But in the Eli example, as we saw, Eli legitimately fell in love with Patrick. Even though Patrick is solidly a robot, he was legitimately in love with Patrick. So it's like it kind of shows you both spectrums when it comes to the sex bots. The good guys who actually care about their bot, and then the Joshes of the world who just want to use it as a tool, a sex toy, a maid, shit like that. So, yeah, I'm glad that Eli was in there. I'm glad that they put that angle in there too, that not everybody's just using these things as, sex bots.
All right. Well, with that said, that's going to wrap up this episode and our discussion on Companion. But let's find out what we got new, if anything, for people to listen to. So what do you got, Venom?
All right. Now available to listen to is No More Room in Hell presents Creature Comforts, episode 34. where we looked at our first animated feature, Batman: The Doom That Came to Gotham. So that was a fun episode. Check that out. That is available right now. I saw it on the website, so it is up. And then I have an episode of the Crystal Lake Gift Shop in the can, ready to go. I'm just putting some finishing touches on the edit now. That should be available to listen to by the end of this week. I would probably say a few days after you're hearing this episode, you should be able to get that Crystal Lake Gift Shop on the No More Room in Hell feed. So look out for that one. That's episode 6 of the Crystal Lake Gift Shop, where we looked at the 6th episode of Friday the 13th, the series entitled The Great Montero. And I think that's all I have. Yeah, that's everything.
All right. How about you, Don?
Yeah. As mentioned, the latest Creature Conference is available. I think we're probably going to start planning the next one pretty soon, because it's now, I think it's the 2nd or 3rd of the new month. So we're probably going to be looking into a new one of those pretty soon. The show I mentioned last time, Paranormal, The New Normal, that one should be recording sooner rather than later. As of right now, the recording date is just vaguely around Valentine's Day, so whatever that means. We are, like I said, we're discussing not necessarily like the bottom of the barrel, but like the low end of the werewolf genre. Like I said, I think we've gotten the official list now, and outside of like maybe 1 or 2 titles, like the best film on there is 2 of the Howling sequels. So we're going to be discussing 2, and I believe it was 5. It's either 5 or 6. I don't remember which one, but those are like the top end of the films that we're going to be discussing. So that should give you like an idea. We're not discussing Howling. We're not discussing American Werewolf in London, Dog Soldiers. We're discussing like that kind of stuff. So I'll have more details when everything is available. And I think that's pretty much it. The only other thing is that I am starting Women in Horror Month shortly, so I'll have a lot of that coming up in the upcoming weeks. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Okay. As far as I go, No More Room in Hell number, what is it, 64 should be out. If you're listening to this episode, it is already sent off to the places that be to get it posted, as well as YouTube. It should be up. And I actually did all that before we started recording this episode, so that should be available. We talked the Clairvoyant, aka the Killing Hour, and Cruising, so check those out. And that's it for me. Is there a theatrical movie releasing this week?
I think Venom said the first 2 months. I think Venom said the first 2 months.
We actually get next week off because next week's Valentine's Day, so they don't generally open horror movies on Valentine's Day. Hard Eyes opens this week, February 7th.
Okay.
And then we've got The Monkey February 21st. I don't think we have anything the week of Valentine's, so I was a little mistaken last week.
No, that's okay, because I knew it was either this week or next week. I thought was a gap week, because I knew Hard Eyes was on the way. I just couldn't remember if it was this week or next week. But okay, so Hard Eyes looks like it could be decent. I just, you never know. Slashers are usually easy to keep trailers for. That's the problem. So
yeah, that's the thing. Like that slashers, like I expected nothing out of Eli Roth's Thanksgiving, and then it ended up being one of my favorite movies of that year. So go figure. And then, but then on the other end of the spectrum, there was It's a Wonderful Knife that I thought was going to be halfway decent and ended up sucking complete ass because of Justin Long. But that's a story for another podcast.
I feel like one thing like the Terrifier movies being in theaters has done is it's kind of like licensed slashers to go like hard R again. Not that they all do, because some still are, they put out a little more tame of a product, but like I've noticed like the R-rated ones, they feel like they are safer now and like getting really brutal with the kills, which is good. But yeah, that's it. I know something did drop on Shudder. I think Dark Match, which I don't know a ton about. I think it's
All I
like
know is it
wrestling
stars
related.
Jericho. All I know is that it stars Jericho.
Oh, he's in it.
Yeah.
I knew
Yeah,
he
they've
was
been
like. I knew he had something to do
been-
with the production, but I didn't know he was actually. In
they've
it.
been promoting it heavily on AEW. He's involved. I haven't seen it yet, but he's involved.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, I have a feeling because it's on Shudder, I'll probably have watched it before we even need to worry about if that's what we're doing, and then we can see what else gets released in the meantime as well. So, I'll say at the end of that, it's a mystery what we're doing next. It's to be determined. We'll figure it out. But that said, thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Fresh Cuts. Let's say bye to the listeners.
Later.
Goodbye, and I love you, Sophie Thatcher. You're adorable. I love you.
Yes, can't wait to see you soon on season 3 of Yellow Jackets. Peace.